My dear brothers and sisters, pause for a moment and turn your gaze to the boundless heavens above. Have you ever stood beneath the canopy of stars, your heart stirred by the mystery of creation, and wondered, what if beings of unimaginable majesty, giant angels, radiant as the dawn, mighty as the pillars of the earth, once walked among us? What if their footsteps shook the mountains, their voices resounded like the trumpets of eternity, and their presence forever altered the tapestry of our world? Imagine, if you will, a time when the divine and the mortal stood face to face, not merely to coexist, but to shape the very destiny of humanity. Come, let us embark on a sacred journey together, a story that weaves awe, peril, and the eternal call to wisdom. This is not a tale of mere power, but a testament to the courage of the human spirit, the fragility of our choices, and the divine responsibility that binds us all to one another and to the Creator. In the beginning, when the world was still young, when the rivers sang hymns of creation and the winds carried the whispers of the divine, the heavens opened and the giant angels descended. These were no ordinary beings, my friends, but celestial titans towering as the ancient cedars of Lebanon, their forms radiant with the light of eternity. Their wings, vast as the horizons, shimmered with colors no mortal eye could fully comprehend, and their eyes burned with the wisdom of the ages. The book of Genesis speaks of the sons of God, those mysterious figures who walked the earth in the days of old, while the ancient book of Enoch paints a vivid picture of their grandeur, beings of fire and glory, entrusted with a divine mandate to watch over the children of the Creator. Imagine the scene, dear ones, a quiet valley bathed in the golden light of dawn, suddenly trembling as these colossal figures appeared. Shepherds froze in their fields, their flocks scattering in fear. Kings in their lofty halls felt their thrones shake, sensing a power far greater than their own. Children, with wide-eyed wonder, pointed to the skies, whispering, "Are these the messengers of God?" The earth itself seemed to bow in reverence, its mountains humming with the weight of their presence. Their voices, when they spoke, were like thunder rolling through the valleys, yet carried a melody that stirred the soul, a harmony of divine purpose and celestial love. Yet, their arrival was not without shadow. The book of Psalms reminds us that the Lord's messengers often bring both blessing and trial, for their ways are not our ways. The ground quaked beneath their steps and the rivers churned as if sensing a coming storm. Villages whispered of omens and elders gathered under starlit skies, pondering the meaning of these celestial visitors. Were they sent to guide humanity toward the light, to lift us closer to the divine? Or had they come to test us, to weigh our hearts in the balance of eternity? The question hung heavy in the air, like a seed planted in fertile soil, waiting to sprout in ways no one could foresee. In those early days, humanity stood at the threshold of wonder and fear. The giant angels, with their radiance and might, were both a promise and a challenge. They walked among us, their footsteps leaving imprints in the earth that would become sacred sites for generations. Some among our ancestors knelt in awe, offering prayers and sacrifices, seeing in the angels a reflection of the Creator's glory. Others, gripped by fear, hid in the shadows, whispering tales of judgment and doom. The book of Isaiah speaks of a God who is both near and far, and so it was with these angels close enough to touch the earth, yet distant in their divine mystery. Their presence changed the rhythm of the world. Farmers noticed their crops grew taller, as if blessed by the angels' light. Poets wove songs of celestial visitors, their verses carried on the winds to distant lands. Yet, with every blessing came a tremor of unease. The angels' power was vast, their intentions unclear. Would they remain as guardians, watching over humanity with paternal care? Or would their divine mandate lead to trials that would test the very soul of creation? The stage was set, my friends, for a story that would unfold across the ages, a story of power and peril, of choices made and destinies forged, a story that would forever mark the heart of humanity with the imprint of the divine. My dear friends, let us now journey forward to a time when humanity began to flourish under the watchful gaze of the giant angels. The earth was no longer a cradle of innocence but a vibrant tapestry of life. Our ancestors tilled the soil, coaxing forth harvests that fed growing tribes. They built cities of stone and clay, their towers reaching toward the heavens as if in silent homage to the divine. Songs filled the air, and the laughter of children echoed through the valleys. Yet, above it all, the giant angels stood silent sentinels, their wings casting long shadows across the land. In their boundless wisdom, or perhaps in a moment of divine sorrow, they made a choice that would forever alter the course of history. They chose to intervene in the affairs of men. The Book of Enoch, that ancient and mysterious text, tells us that these celestial beings descended not merely as observers, but as teachers. They shared with humanity the secrets of the heavens, knowledge that sparkled like stars in the night sky. They taught us to chart the paths of the constellations, to predict the seasons by the dance of celestial bodies. They revealed the art of forging metals, transforming dull ore into tools that gleamed like the sun. They whispered of the mysteries of the earth, how to harness its rivers, how to carve its stones, how to bend its forces to our will. This knowledge was a gift, a divine spark meant to elevate humanity, to draw us closer to the Creator's design. And for a time it did. Villages grew into cities, their walls adorned with intricate carvings inspired by the angel's radiance. Scholars penned scrolls filled with celestial wisdom, their words preserving the teachings for generations. Farmers crafted plows that tamed the wildest fields, feeding nations. Artisans wove tapestries and forged ornaments that seemed to capture the light of the angels themselves. The Book of Sirach reminds us that wisdom is a treasure, and for a moment, humanity held that treasure in its hands, marveling at its brilliance. Yet, my friends, with great gifts come great burdens, and the wisdom of the angels was a double-edged sword. The human heart, though created in the image of God, is frail and prone to temptation. The Book of Ecclesiastes warns that knowledge without understanding is vanity, and so it was. The tools of creation became instruments of destruction. Plows were reforged into swords, and the metals that once built homes now armed armies. Cities, once beacons of unity, became fortresses of rivalry, their rulers drunk on the power the angels had bestowed. The stars, once guides for peaceful navigation, were now used to chart paths of conquest. Pride, that ancient shadow, crept into the hearts of men, whispering that we could rival the divine, that we could wield the angels' gifts without their wisdom. The giant angels, watching from their lofty heights, saw the fruits of their intervention turn bitter. Some among them, moved by compassion, sought to guide humanity back to harmony. They walked among the people, their voices gentle as they urged restraint, humility, and love. Others, perhaps swayed by the allure of earthly power, lingered too long, their divine light dimming in the shadow of mortal desires. The Book of Proverbs teaches that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, but humanity, in its fervor, forgot this truth. The earth groaned under the weight of ambition, its rivers muddied, its forests felled, its skies darkened with the smoke of war. The angels stood at a crossroads. Would they ascend back to the heavens, leaving humanity to its fate? Or would they remain, seeking to mend the fractures they had unwittingly caused? Their choice was momentous, for it would not only shape the destiny of men but test the very balance of creation. The divine and the mortal, once allies, now stood on the precipice of conflict. The seeds of knowledge, planted with hope, had sprouted thorns, and the world trembled as it awaited the harvest. The stage was set, my dear ones, for a reckoning, a time when the cost of power would be laid bare, and the true. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, the heavens wept, and the earth trembled. The intervention of the giant angels, though born of divine intent, had sown seeds of discord that now bore a bitter harvest. The Book of Psalms declares that the foundations of the world can shake when the Lord's messengers stir, and so they did. The balance of creation, once harmonious, was disrupted by the weight of human pride and the unintended consequences of celestial gifts. Rivers, once lifelines of sustenance, burst their banks, swallowing villages in torrents of mud and despair. Mountains, ancient sentinels of the earth, crumbled, their peaks falling like broken crowns into the valleys below. Storms of fire and ash swept across the plains, painting the skies with hues of wrath and sorrow. Ancient texts, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the whispered tales of forgotten tribes, speak of a great deluge, a flood that rose to cleanse the earth of its stains. The Book of Genesis recounts the waters that covered the world in the days of Noah, a divine act of sorrow and renewal. So it was in this time, as the giant angels stood towering above the chaos, their radiance dimmed by the weight of what had come to pass. Their wings, once symbols of protection, now cast long shadows over a world unraveling. Humanity, caught in the tempest, cried out in anguish, "Why have you brought this upon us? Where is the mercy of the Creator who formed us from the dust?" Villages became ruins, their hearths cold and silent. The songs of children were drowned by the roar of the storm, and the fields that once bloomed with life lay barren under a sky that refused to clear. The giant angels, for all their might, were not untouched by this suffering. Some among them gazed upon the devastation with eyes of sorrow, their divine hearts stirred by the cries of the innocent. Others, hardened by the choices they had made, stood resolute, believing the catastrophe to be a necessary reckoning. The Book of Lamentations reminds us that even in the darkest hour, the Lord's mercies are not consumed. Yet to those who endured, it seemed as though mercy had fled. The earth itself groaned, its rivers choked with debris, its forests reduced to ash, its creatures fleeing in terror. The world that had once sung of creation now wailed a dirge of loss. Yet, my friends, even in this darkness, a spark of hope endured. The human spirit, though battered, is forged in the fire of adversity. The book of Isaiah speaks of a remnant, a people chosen not by might but by faith, who would rise from the ashes. Among the survivors, there were those who refused to bow to despair. Elders gathered their trembling kin, recounting tales of the Creator's faithfulness. Mothers, their faces streaked with tears, shielded their children, whispering promises of a new dawn. Farmers, their fields destroyed, salvaged what seeds they could, planting them in defiance of the storm. The catastrophe was not merely a punishment, but a call to awaken, to rebuild, to seek the wisdom that had been lost in the shadow of pride. And so, as the waters rose and the fires raged, the stage was set for humanity to answer that call, to prove that even in the face of divine power, the heart of man could endure. Let us now pause, dear ones, to honor the indomitable spirit of humanity which, like the mustard seed of the gospel, grows mighty from the humblest beginnings. In the shadow of the giant angel's power, our ancestors did not surrender. They were not kings or conquerors, but ordinary souls, farmers who knew the rhythm of the soil, shepherds who guarded their flocks, poets who wove hope into verse, and mothers who cradled the future in their arms. The book of Joel calls us to return to the Lord with all our hearts, and so these people did, their faith a beacon amidst the ruins. They stood not with the strength of armies, but with the courage of those who loved deeply and refused to let that love be extinguished. Across the shattered earth, tribes forged alliances, their differences set aside in the face of shared suffering. Elders, their voices steady despite the trembling ground, gathered their people under starlit skies, recounting the stories of creation, the breath of God in Adam, the covenant with Noah, the promise to Abraham. These stories were not mere tales, but anchors reminding them that the Creator's love endures even in the storm. Young warriors, their hands calloused from labor, trained in the shadow of crumbling hills, their eyes fixed on the horizon where the angels stood. Women, their hearts heavy with loss, wove tapestries of hope, their needles threading defiance into every stitch. The book of Proverbs teaches that a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken, and so humanity wove a tapestry of unity, faith, and resilience. These were the ones who climbed the jagged cliffs to face the giant angels, their hearts pounding with both fear and determination. They carried not only spears and shields, but questions that burned brighter than any flame. Why do you bring such trials? Are we not also children of the Creator, formed in His image? What is the purpose of the suffering? Their resistance was not born of arrogance, but of love for their families, their lands, and the fragile beauty of the world they called home. The book of Psalms sings of those who trust in the Lord, whose hearts are steadfast even in the valley of the shadow. These were such people, their defiance a prayer, their courage a hymn. The giant angels, for all their celestial might, began to take notice. They saw in humanity's resolve not rebellion, but a reflection of the divine spark, the same spark that had animated the prophets, that had called Moses to lead, that had inspired David to sing. Some among the angels, their hearts softened, whispered of mercy, of a new covenant between heaven and earth. Others, their pride unyielding, prepared for conflict, their wings stirring storms in their wake. The book of Hosea speaks of a God who desires mercy, not sacrifice, and in the eyes of the angels, a question arose: could humanity, frail and flawed, teach them something of the Creator's heart? The stage was set for a confrontation that would not only test the strength of men, but reveal the true nature of power itself. The world held its breath, awaiting the moment when destiny would be forged in the fire of sacrifice and hope. My dear brothers and sisters, the hour had come when the trembling earth could no longer bear the weight of silence. Words of plea and prayer gave way to action, and the world became a battlefield where the divine and the mortal stood face to face. Picture it, if you will, the giant angels, their forms radiant as the noonday sun, their wings spanning the heavens, casting shadows that swallowed entire valleys. Their voices shook the skies, each word a thunderclap that echoed in the hearts of men. Their armor gleamed with celestial fire, and their eyes burned with the weight of eternity. Yet, before them stood humanity, small in stature, frail in form, but unyielding in spirit. Armed with spears forged from the earth, shields carved from ancient oaks, and the fire of hope kindled in their souls. They faced the celestial titans, not for glory, but for the survival of all they held dear. The book of Hebrews speaks of faith that moves mountains, and in this moment, faith was a beacon piercing the darkness. Among the warriors rose a hero unnamed in the scrolls of history, yet forever etched in the heart of the story. Like David before Goliath, like Deborah leading her people, this figure stood not for personal gain, but for justice, for mercy, for the sacred bond between the Creator and His creation. With a heart full of prayer and a voice steady as the dawn, the hero stepped forward, raising a staff not as a weapon, but as a symbol of resolve. "We do not seek your destruction," the hero called to the angels, "but the salvation of our world. You, who were sent to guide, have brought us to the edge of ruin. Let us find a path together, or let this battle decide the fate of all." The angels, their wings stilling for the first time in centuries, paused. Their eyes, blazing with divine fire, searched the faces of the gathered multitude, farmers and poets, mothers and elders, children clutching their parents' hands. The air grew heavy, the winds fell silent, and the earth seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a sound like the breaking of 1,000 chains, the battle began. Skies darkened with storm, and the clash of mortal and divine resounded like the trumpets of Revelation. Spears met celestial armor, their tips sparking against the angels' radiant forms. Arrows flew, only to dissolve in the light of divine shields. The ground cracked beneath the weight of the struggle, and rivers ran red with the blood of the fallen. Yet, this was no mere clash of strength. The warriors fought not with hatred, but with love for their kin, their lands, and the fragile hope of a new dawn. Women stood shoulder to shoulder with men, their voices raised in songs of defiance that drowned out the chaos. Elders, too old to wield weapons, knelt in prayer, their words ascending like incense to the heavens. The hero, bloody but unbowed, moved through the fray, rallying the weary, binding the wounded, and calling out to the angels, "See the heart of humanity. See the love that binds us. Is this not the divine spark you were sent to protect?" The book of Psalms sings of the Lord who hears the cries of the afflicted, and in this moment, those cries were a chorus that could not be ignored. The giant angels, for all their power, were not untouched by this courage. Some faltered, their weapons lowered as they glimpsed the divine love reflected in humanity's sacrifice. Others, their pride unyielding, pressed forward, their wings stirring tempests that uprooted trees and shattered stone. The battle raged through day and night, the skies weeping torrents, the earth trembling with each blow. In the final hour, the hero climbed a hill, raising a tattered banner woven by the hands of the people, a symbol not of victory, but of reconciliation. The angels, their radiance dimmed by the weight of the struggle, paused once more, their eyes fixed on the figure who stood not as a conqueror, but as a bridge between heaven and earth. The fateful moment had arrived, and the world awaited the outcome. Part 6. The Turning Point. The battle did not end in triumph or defeat, my dear ones, but in revelation. The giant angels, moved by the courage and sacrifice of humanity, saw at last the truth they had overlooked in their celestial zeal. Power without responsibility breeds chaos, strength without mercy becomes tyranny. The Book of Micah calls us to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God, and in this moment, the angels embraced that call. One by one, they lowered their weapons, their radiant forms kneeling before the Creator's design. Their wings, once symbols of dominion, folded in reverence, and their voices, once thunderous, softened to a hymn of sorrow and hope. The hero, weary and scarred, stood before them, not as a victor, but as a voice of the people. "We fight not to destroy you," the hero said, "but to protect what is sacred, our homes, our children, our hope. Let us build a world where power serves love, where heaven and earth walk hand in hand." These words, like the Sermon on the Mount, carried the weight of eternal truth. They echoed in the hearts of the angels, stirring memories of their divine mandate, to guide, to nurture, to reflect the Creator's love. The book of Isaiah speaks of a time when swords are beaten into plowshares, and in this moment that vision took root. The angels, in their wisdom, understood that their intervention, though born of divine intent, had tested the delicate balance of creation. In humility, they chose to withdraw not in shame but in honor. One by one, they ascended to the heavens, their forms dissolving into the light of the stars. The storms ceased, the floods receded, and the skies cleared, revealing a world scarred yet alive. The earth, though wounded, breathed anew, its rivers flowing once more, its fields whispering of renewal. The people, standing amidst the ruins, looked to the heavens, not in fear, but in gratitude. They knelt not to the angels, but to the Creator who had sustained them through the trial. The book of Revelation speaks of a new heaven and a new earth, and in this moment, that promise was kindled in the hearts of all who had endured. The hero, now a symbol of sacrifice, became a bridge between the divine and the mortal. The people gathered around, their hands joined in a circle of unity, their voices raised in a song of thanksgiving. They rebuilt their homes, not with pride, but with humility, knowing that the scars of the past were also the seeds of the future. The giant angels had left, but their presence lingered, not in fear, but in the lessons they had imparted. The world was not yet perfect, but it was reborn, its destiny shaped by the courage of those who had stood firm, by the mercy of those who had listened, and by the love that had prevailed. The turning point was not merely an end, but a beginning, a new chapter in the story of humanity, written in the light of wisdom and hope. My dear brothers and sisters, as the dust of the great battle settled and the light of a new dawn broke across the scarred earth, humanity stood at the threshold of a new era. The giant angels had departed, their radiant forms ascending into the heavens, their wings a fleeting shimmer against the stars. Yet, their presence lingered, not in the trembling of the ground or the echo of their voices, but in the lessons they had left behind, etched deep within the soul of creation. The book of Proverbs teaches that wisdom is more precious than gold, and from the trials of the angels, humanity gleaned a treasure that would guide us through the ages. The understanding that power, whether divine or mortal, must be tempered by love, and that responsibility is the cornerstone of a world in harmony. What, then, is the legacy of the giant angels? It is not found in the crumbled stones of ancient cities, nor in the fading myths whispered by the winds. It is alive in the choices we make, in the hearts we nurture, and in the world we strive to build. The angels taught us that knowledge, though a divine gift, becomes a burden when wielded without humility. The book of Ecclesiastes reminds us that there is a time for every purpose under heaven, and the time of the angels was a season of trial that forged resilience in the human spirit. They showed us that catastrophe, though painful, can be a crucible for renewal, and that sacrifice, though costly, plants the seeds of hope for generations yet to come. Consider, my friends, the world they left behind, a world not unmarred, but alive with possibility. The floods had receded, leaving fertile plains where new crops could grow. The fires had cooled, revealing landscapes where communities could rebuild. The people, once divided by pride, now gathered in circles of unity, their hands joined in shared purpose. The book of Isaiah speaks of a remnant, a people who endure through faith, and so it was. Farmers returned to their fields, sowing seeds with prayers of gratitude. Artisans carved stories of the battle into stone, their chisels preserving the lessons for their children. Poets sang of the hero, whose courage had bridged heaven and earth, and of the angels, whose departure marked not an end, but a beginning. The legacy of the angels is also a mirror, reflecting our own time. We face no celestial titans, yet we stand at our own crossroads. The storms of division rage in our world, the fires of greed consume our resources, and the floods of indifference threaten to drown the cries of the marginalized. The book of Matthew calls us to be the light of the world, and the story of the angels reminds us how to shine. We must wield knowledge with care, ensuring it serves the common good. We must harness power with responsibility, knowing that every choice ripples through the tapestry of creation. And we must face trials with courage, trusting that even in the darkest hour, the Creator's love endures. The angels call us to be stewards of this earth, to nurture its rivers, its forests, its creatures, as sacred gifts. The book of Genesis tells us we were created in the image of God, and with that gift comes a sacred duty, to care for one another, to lift up the fallen, to heal the broken. The giant angels, though gone, remain a beacon, urging us to look to the heavens not in fear, but in wonder, knowing that we, too, are part of a divine plan. Their story is a call to action, a plea to protect our world from the invisible dangers of pride, neglect, and division. It is a reminder that every act of kindness, every step toward justice, every moment of forgiveness is a victory in the eternal battle for a world of peace. Let us carry this legacy forward, my dear ones. Let us teach our children the lessons of the angels, that they may walk with wisdom and compassion. Let us build communities where every voice is heard, where every heart is valued, where every hand works for the good of all. The book of Psalms sings of those who delight in the law of the Lord, flourishing like trees planted by streams of water. So let us be those trees, rooted in faith, bearing fruit in love, and standing tall through every storm. The giant angels may no longer walk among us, but their light shines in every act of courage, every gesture of mercy, every prayer for a better world. My beloved friends, the story of the giant angels is not a mere legend of the past, but a living flame that burns in our hearts today. It is a mirror for our present, a map for our future, and a call to rise as heroes in our own time. The angels remind us that we are all called to wield power with humility, to face trials with courage, and to build a world where love reigns supreme. Their story teaches us that true strength lies not in dominion, but in sacrifice. Not in pride, but in unity. Not in conquest, but in compassion. As we stand beneath the vast sky, let us pledge to carry their lessons forward. Let us be the hands that rebuild what is broken, the voices that speak for the voiceless, the hearts that forgive even in the face of pain. The book of John tells us that love casts out fear, and so let us love boldly, fiercely, endlessly. Share this story with those you cherish, your families, your friends, your communities, that its wisdom may spread like seeds on fertile ground. Let it inspire us to act, to dream, to build a world that reflects the Creator's glory. If this tale has stirred your soul, I invite you to leave your thoughts in the comments below. What does the story of the giant angels teach you about our world today? How can we, together, forge a future of peace and hope? Subscribe to our channel, like this video, and ring the notification bell to join us on this sacred journey of discovery. Share this story with those who need its light, that we may weave a tapestry of hope across the earth. Together, let us walk in the footsteps of the hero, guided by the lessons of the angels, building a world that shines with justice, mercy, and love. Thank you for joining me in this reflection, for lending your hearts to this story, and for dreaming of a better tomorrow. May the peace of the Creator be with you always, and may we go forth, hand in hand, to write the next chapter of our shared story, a chapter of hope, sacrifice, and eternal love. Let us begin today, with every step, every word, every act of kindness, creating a world where the light of the angels lives on in us all.